The desert highway stretched across Nevada like a ribbon of asphalt cutting through an ocean of sand, shimmering under the merciless sun. Olivia Reeves gripped the steering wheel of her dusty Jeep Wrangler, her calloused hands steady despite the memories threatening to surface. For 5 years, she'd been nothing but a delivery driver in a small town where no one knew her name or the blood on her hands. But that carefully constructed anonymity was about to shatter at a gas station just outside of Las Vegas, where a Navy SEAL would whisper 3 words that would drag her back into a world she'd tried desperately to forget. Nightshade is active. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Jeep's engine made that rattling sound again, a mechanical protest that reminded Olivia of gunfire in the distance. She'd been ignoring it for weeks, just like she'd been ignoring the nightmares and the phantom pain in her left shoulder where the bullet had torn through muscle and bone. Just like she'd been ignoring the burner phone tucked in the hidden compartment beneath her seat, untouched for half a decade. Just get to Phoenix, she muttered to herself, adjusting the rearview mirror not to see what was behind her, but out of habit, checking for tails, for threats, for ghosts. Drop the packages, pick up the new shipment, and head back. Simple. Simple was what she needed. Simple was safe. Simple was what Dr. Kaminsky had recommended after her last therapy session at the VA hospital in Portland. Build a routine, he'd said, his voice kind but clinical. Find something normal and stick to it. The mind heals through repetition and predictability. So she'd found routine in the most mundane job imaginable, long-haul delivery for a medical supply company. Driving through the night, radio crackling with late-night talk shows about conspiracy theories and alien abductions, stopping only for gas and coffee strong enough to strip paint. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept her mind occupied and her hands busy. Most importantly, it kept her away from people who might ask questions about the scars, both visible and invisible. The gas gauge dipped below a quarter tank, and Olivia sighed. She'd pushed it further than she should have, but the thought of stopping, of interacting with another human being, had made her postpone the inevitable. Now, with the needle hovering near empty and the next town 40 miles away, she had no choice. Desert Sun Gas and Mart appeared on the horizon like a mirage, its neon sign buzzing in the afternoon heat. Olivia pulled in, positioning her Jeep so that she could see both the entrance to the mini-mart and the highway. Old habits. As she filled the tank, she scanned the parking lot. 2 sedans. Tourists, judging by the rental car stickers. A pickup truck with Nevada plates, mud-splattered and well-used. And at the far pump, a black SUV with tinted windows and government plates. Her pulse quickened and she focused on the numbers ticking up on the gas pump, forcing herself to breathe normally. Just because it's government doesn't mean it's them. Could be Forest Service, park rangers, IRS, for all you know. But when the SUV's door opened and a man stepped out, Olivia knew something in the way he moved. Efficient, deliberate, like every motion had been practiced 1,000 times. Military. Special forces, most likely. She'd known men like him, had been trained by men like him, had fought alongside them in places that didn't exist on civilian maps. She kept her head down, baseball cap pulled low over her eyes, as she replaced the gas cap and walked toward the mini-mart to pay. Just another driver stopping for gas. Nothing to see here. The bell above the door jingled as she entered. The blast of air conditioning was a welcome relief from the Nevada heat. She grabbed a bottle of water and a protein bar, placing them on the counter along with 2 20s for the gas. "Pump 4, she said, not making eye contact with the cashier. A heavy-set man with a name tag that read, Hank. "Hot one today," Hank offered, making the kind of small talk that Olivia had learned to navigate with non-committal grunts and minimal eye contact. "Yep. Heading to Vegas? Phoenix. Long drive. Want a coffee for the road? Just brewed a fresh pot." Olivia was about to decline when the bell jingled again. She didn't need to turn around to know who had entered. The air in the store seemed to change, charged with a tension that only those who had seen combat would recognize. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. "I'll take that coffee," she said to Hank, using the moment to glance at the security mirror mounted in the corner of the store. The man from the SUV was browsing the snack aisle, but his attention wasn't on the chips. Even with his sunglasses on, she could tell he was watching her. Hank handed her the coffee in a paper cup. "Cream and sugar's over there by the fountain drinks." Olivia nodded and moved to the small station, her back to the wall so she could keep the store entrance and the man in her peripheral vision. She doctored her coffee mechanically, mind racing through scenarios and escape routes. The nearest weapon was the knife in her boot, but she hoped it wouldn't come to that. 5 years of peace had made her soft, slowed her reflexes. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The man approached the counter, placing a bottle of water and a pack of gum next to the register. He was tall, with the lean, corded muscle of someone who used his body as a tool rather than for show. His hair was military short, face tanned and weathered by sun and wind. No visible tattoos, no identifying features beyond the subtle bulge of a concealed weapon under his light jacket. "That all for you?" Hank asked. "And whatever the lady's having." The man replied, his voice a quiet rumble that sent a jolt of recognition through Olivia. She knew that voice, had heard it through a radio headset during operations that had never officially happened. "Commander James Harlow. Navy SEAL, Team 6. The man who had led the extraction mission in Somalia that had gone so catastrophically wrong. Olivia stiffened, but managed a polite, "No thanks, I've got it." Harlow turned to her then, removing his sunglasses. His eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky, and they studied her with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. "I insist," he said. "Least I can do for a fellow road warrior." It was a code phrase, one that had been established for emergencies, for situations where team members needed to identify themselves without alerting others. Olivia felt the ground shift beneath her, the carefully constructed normalcy of the past 5 years crumbling. "Thanks, but I prefer to pay my own way," she replied, the counterphrase slipping from her lips before she could stop herself. Muscle memory, stronger than her desire to remain anonymous. A ghost of a smile touched Harlow's lips. He paid for his items and hers, despite her protests, and then followed her out into the shimmering heat of the parking lot. "Nice Jeep," he commented as she unlocked the driver's side door. "Reliable, good for off-road situations. Smart choice." "It gets me where I need to go," Olivia replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Thanks for the coffee, but I need to hit the road." Harlow leaned against her Jeep, casual to anyone watching, but positioned to block her escape. "Long time, Nightshade." The code name hit her like a physical blow. Nightshade, lead driver and field medic for Ghost Recon Unit 7, a joint special operations team that officially never existed. The unit that had been sent into the Somali desert to extract a high-value intelligence asset, only to find themselves in an ambush that had left 3 team members dead and the asset compromised. "I don't know what you're talking about," Olivia said, even as her body tensed, ready for conflict. "My name is Olivia Reeves. I deliver medical supplies." "You've got the wrong person." "Olivia Reeves died in a helicopter crash over the Gulf of Aden," Harlow said quietly, "along with the rest of Ghost Recon Unit 7. Very tragic. Full military honors. Closed caskets, of course, since there were no bodies to recover." Olivia's throat went dry. "What do you want?" "Nightshade is active," Harlow whispered, so low that only she could hear him. Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Reactivation after deep cover. Emergency recall for a mission of highest priority. The kind of mission that came with presidential authorization, and the understanding that it was likely a one-way ticket. "I'm out," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Have been for 5 years. Whatever this is, find someone else." Harlow straightened, his posture shifting subtly into one that Olivia recognized from briefing rooms and forward operating bases. "Not my call. Orders come from the top. Director Sullivan himself." Sullivan. The name sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the air conditioning she'd just left behind. Richard Sullivan had been their handler, the shadowy figure who had planned their missions, provided their intelligence, and then, when things went wrong in Somalia, had disavowed all knowledge of their existence. Sullivan left us to die in the desert, Olivia hissed, anger flaring hot and sudden. He burned us, cut communications, denied extraction. Why the hell would I trust anything that comes from him? Because Marco is alive. The world stopped. 3 simple words, and everything changed. Marco Diaz, Ghost Recon's intelligence specialist. Her friend. The man she'd seen take 2 bullets to the chest before she was forced to leave him behind, blood pooling beneath him in the sand. That's not possible, Olivia whispered. I saw him go down. I tried to save him, but he survived. Harlow cut her off. Captured, held for nearly 5 years. We just got confirmation last week. Facial recognition from a surveillance camera at a compound near the Kenyan border. Olivia's mind raced. If Marco was alive, if he'd been a prisoner all this time while she'd been driving across the American Southwest, delivering medical supplies and pretending the past didn't exist. Why now? She demanded. It's been 5 years. Why didn't you look for him before? We did, Harlow said, and there was something in his voice. Regret, maybe, or guilt, but the intelligence was spotty. Rumors, mostly. Nothing concrete until now. Sullivan's been running a Black Ops search team since the incident, off the books. Now we have proof of life, and we're going in. And you need a driver, Olivia concluded, the pieces falling into place. Someone who knows the terrain, who can navigate under fire. Not just any driver, Harlow said. The best driver DOD ever trained. The woman who drove through an active firefight with 2 blown tires and a shattered windshield to get her team to the extraction point. We need you, Nightshade. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, memories washing over her. The taste of dust and fear, the rhythmic thumping of helicopter rotors. The weight of Marco's body as she dragged him toward the vehicle, his blood soaking into her uniform. The radio crackling with static as Sullivan's voice delivered the kill order, not for the enemy, but for them, his own team. You're asking me to trust the man who betrayed us, she said, opening her eyes to fix Harlow with a hard stare. The man who left Marco to rot in a cell for 5 years. I'm asking you to help save Marco, Harlow corrected. Whatever happened in Somalia, whatever went wrong, this is about bringing one of our own home. You took an oath, Nightshade. No one left behind. The oath. The sacred promise that had bound their unit together, stronger than regulations or even direct orders. It was what had driven Olivia to drag Marco's bleeding body across 50 yards of open ground under enemy fire. It was what had nearly gotten her killed. It was what had haunted her for 5 years of self-imposed exile. I have deliveries, she said weakly, a final attempt at clinging to the simple life she'd built. People are waiting for these supplies. Harlow reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black phone similar to the one hidden beneath her seat. Everything's been arranged. Your company thinks you've been hired for a special government contract. Your route has been reassigned. As far as anyone knows, Olivia Reeves is exactly where she's supposed to be. Of course, the government excelled at creating convenient cover stories, at making people appear and disappear as needed. It was what had allowed Olivia Reeves to emerge from the ashes of Nightshade in the first place. When? She asked. The question itself an admission of defeat. Now, Harlow replied. My team is waiting at Nellis Air Force Base. Transport leaves in 3 hours. We're wheels up for Djibouti by sundown. Djibouti. The staging ground for operations in Somalia and the surrounding region. The last place Olivia had felt like a soldier instead of a ghost. I need to make arrangements, she said. My apartment, my job. Already handled, Harlow interrupted. As far as anyone knows, you've accepted a lucrative long-term contract. Your rent is paid for 6 months. Your plants will be watered. Olivia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I don't have plants. Then you won't have to worry about them dying while you're gone, Harlow replied, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. She should say no. Should get in her Jeep and drive away, disappear again, find a new identity in a new town. But Marco's face kept appearing in her mind, his easy smile, the way he could curse in 7 languages, how he'd once talked a local warlord into letting them pass through a checkpoint using nothing but a pack of cigarettes and a story about his fictional grandmother. Marco, who had saved her life more times than she could count. Marco, who might still be alive, waiting for rescue. "I'll need my gear," she said finally. "My real gear, not this civilian crap." Harlow nodded. "Everything you need will be waiting at Nellis. Your old kit has been updated with the latest tech." Olivia took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside her. For 5 years, she'd been running on autopilot, existing rather than living. Now, despite the danger ahead, despite the uncertainty and the lingering distrust, she felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Purpose. "Follow me to the base," Harlow said, turning toward his SUV. "My team will secure your vehicle." "No," Olivia replied, her voice firmer now. "I drive myself, alone. That's non-negotiable." Harlow studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Trust has to be earned back. I get that." He handed her a small GPS device. "The coordinates are already programmed in. Side entrance. Security has been notified to expect you. Ask for Colonel Westfield." Olivia took the device, her fingers brushing against Harlow's. A moment of human contact that sent an unexpected jolt through her system. 5 years of minimal human interaction had made even the simplest touch feel significant. "If this is a trap," she said quietly, "if Sullivan is playing some kind of game, then I'm being played too," Harlow finished for her. "But Marco is alive, Nightshade. That part is real. I've seen the footage. It's him." Olivia nodded, the decision made. "I'll see you at Nellis." As Harlow walked back to his SUV, Olivia climbed into her Jeep, her mind already shifting gears. Civilian delivery driver to special operations in the space of a 10-minute conversation. The transition should have been jarring, but instead, it felt like slipping into an old, familiar uniform. She reached beneath the seat and extracted the burner phone she'd kept charged but silent for 5 years, her last connection to a life she'd tried to leave behind. The phone had one number programmed into it, a secure line that would reach a very particular lawyer in Washington, D.C., a man who had once been Ghost Recon's legal advisor and who held a set of encrypted files that detailed every mission, every order, and every betrayal. Insurance, she'd called it. Protection against the day when the past might come looking for her. That day had arrived. Olivia dialed the number, and as she pulled back onto the highway toward Nellis Air Force Base, she listened to the phone ring. Once, twice, 3 times. "Ellis," a cautious voice answered. "It's Nightshade," Olivia said, the code name feeling strange on her tongue after so many years. "Protocol 7 has been initiated. Marco is alive." A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Are you certain?" "No," Olivia admitted. "But I'm going to find out. If I don't make contact within 72 hours, release the Somalia files. All of them." "That would implicate Sullivan in—" "Exactly," Olivia cut him off. "I need leverage. Insurance that I'm not being sent into another trap." There was a pause then. "Understood. 72 hours. Be careful, Nightshade. If Marco really is alive, then someone has been lying to us for 5 years." Olivia finished. "And I intend to find out why." She ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, her mind already running through scenarios, contingencies, extraction plans. The delivery driver was fading. And Nightshade, the operative who had once navigated war zones with preternatural calm, was resurfacing. As she drove toward Nellis Air Force Base, Olivia caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, her eyes were fully alert, focused, alive with purpose rather than merely existing. The dull ache in her shoulder, a constant reminder of Somalia, seemed less pronounced now, overshadowed by the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Hang on, Marco," she murmured, pressing the accelerator a little harder. "I'm coming for you." The Nevada desert blurred around her, and Olivia Reeves, delivery driver, survivor, ghost, began the transformation back into Nightshade, the woman who had once driven through hell to save her team and was preparing to do it again. The gates of Nellis Air Force Base appeared on the horizon, a stark contrast to the desert surrounding it. military precision in a landscape of chaotic beauty. As Olivia approached, she felt a strange sense of homecoming, not to a physical place but to a state of being. For better or worse, she was a soldier again, and soldiers never left their own behind. Olivia followed the GPS coordinates to a nondescript side entrance of the massive base. A guard checkpoint with 2 armed airmen stood between her and whatever fate awaited inside. She pulled up to the checkpoint and rolled down her window, the desert heat immediately flooding the air-conditioned interior of her Jeep. ID, the guard requested, his young face serious beneath his cap. Olivia hesitated. For 5 years, she'd been Olivia Reeves, delivery driver. Her military credentials, her real identity, had been buried along with the empty casket that supposedly contained her remains. What name would clear her through this checkpoint? "I'm here to see Colonel Westfield," she said, deciding to start there. The guard's posture changed subtly, a slight straightening of the shoulders that told Olivia she'd said the right name. "Your name, ma'am?" "Nightshade," she replied, the code name feeling both foreign and familiar on her tongue. The guard consulted a tablet, his eyes widening slightly before his professional demeanor reasserted itself. "Yes, ma'am. You're expected. Please follow the road to Building 7C. An escort will meet you there." The gate lifted, and Olivia drove through, following the signs toward a cluster of administrative buildings set apart from the main base operations. Building 7C was unmarked, distinguishable only by its number stenciled discreetly beside the entrance. As promised, an escort waited outside, a woman in Air Force blues whose ramrod posture and alert eyes suggested special operations rather than administrative personnel. "Nightshade?" the woman asked as Olivia parked and exited her vehicle. "That's what they tell me," Olivia replied, suddenly conscious of her civilian clothes, worn jeans, dusty boots, a faded t-shirt with the logo of her delivery company. 5 years of blending in, of being unremarkable, and now she was stepping back into a world where her very name carried weight. "Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes." The woman introduced herself with a crisp nod but no offered hand. "I'll take you to the briefing. They're waiting." They. The team. Harlow had mentioned his team waiting at Nellis. How many of the old unit had survived Somalia? How many had been reactivated for this mission? The question swirled in Olivia's mind as she followed Hayes through a series of security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. Retinal scans, palm prints, voice recognition, security measures that would have been impossible to fake. Whatever this operation was, it had high-level clearance. The final door opened into what appeared to be a standard conference room, but Olivia's trained eye immediately spotted the signal jammers, the secure communications equipment, the subtle reinforcement of the walls that suggested this room was designed to withstand electronic surveillance and possibly physical attack. 5 people waited inside. Harlow stood at the head of the table, his SUV jacket replaced by desert camouflage fatigues. Beside him was a tall African-American man with Lieutenant Colonel's oak leaves on his collar. Westfield, she presumed. The other 3 were seated. A lean, red-haired woman with the focused intensity of an intelligence analyst, a muscular man with a close-cropped beard whose bearing screamed special forces, and at the far end, a slender man in a tailored suit who seemed out of place among the military personnel. The civilian stood as Olivia entered, and her blood ran cold. Richard Sullivan, Director of Special Activities Division, the man who had abandoned Ghost Recon Unit 7 in the Somali desert 5 years ago, looked exactly as she remembered. Silver-haired, patrician features, the immaculate appearance of someone who made life-or-death decisions from the comfort of air-conditioned offices. "Nightshade," Sullivan said, his voice as smooth and controlled as ever. "Welcome back." Olivia's hand instinctively moved toward her boot, where her knife was concealed, before she caught herself. Killing Sullivan wouldn't bring back the dead or erase the past 5 years. Besides, if Marco really was alive, she needed the resources that only Sullivan could provide. "I'm here for Marco," she said coldly. "Not for you." Sullivan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Irritation, perhaps, or respect. "Of course. We all want the same thing. To bring Specialist Diaz home safely." "Do we?" Olivia challenged. "Because the last time I checked, You left us to die in the desert. Cut communications. Denied extraction, burned the entire unit. So forgive me if I'm skeptical about your sudden concern for a man you've left in enemy hands for 5 years." The room went silent. Harlow shifted uncomfortably, and the bearded Special Forces operator watched with undisguised interest. Only Sullivan remained unruffled. "You've been misinformed," he said calmly. "The extraction was delayed, not denied. By the time our assets were in position, you had already been extracted by local forces, and Specialist Diaz was presumed dead along with the others." "Bullshit," Olivia spat. "I heard the order myself. Abandon Operation Deadfall. All assets are disavowed." "Those were your exact words." Sullivan glanced at Harlow, who studied the table intently. "There were complications that you weren't aware of. Intelligence that suggested the entire operation had been compromised at the highest levels. We had reason to believe that the communication channels themselves were no longer secure." "So you left us to die," Olivia concluded. "So we initiated Protocol Ghost," Sullivan corrected. "Complete communications blackout, false intel about the team's demise, deep cover reassignments for survivors. It was the only way to ensure that whoever had compromised the operation wouldn't come looking to finish the job." Olivia absorbed this, her tactical mind evaluating the explanation even as her instincts screamed distrust. "And Marco? Was abandoning him part of Protocol Ghost too?" "We had no confirmation that Specialist Diaz had survived." Westfield spoke up, his deep voice carrying the weight of command. "The intelligence suggested that all team members still in the compound at the time of extraction had been killed. It wasn't until 3 weeks ago that we received evidence to the contrary." The red-haired analyst slid a folder across the table. Olivia opened it to find surveillance photos, satellite imagery, and what appeared to be intercepted communications. 3 weeks ago, our monitoring system flagged a facial recognition match from a security camera at a compound near the Kenya-Somalia border. The analyst explained, her voice clinical and precise. "The match was partial, only 68% confidence, but enough to warrant further investigation. We deployed assets to the region and obtained confirmation. Marco Diaz is alive and being held at a secure facility operated by the Al-Shabaab splinter group that we were tracking 5 years ago." Olivia studied the photos. The man in them was thinner than she remembered, his face bearing the marks of prolonged captivity, but there was no mistaking Marco's distinctive features and the small scar above his right eyebrow, a souvenir from a training accident years before Somalia. "Why would they keep him alive this long?" she asked, the tactical part of her mind already analyzing, questioning. "What value does he have to them after 5 years?" "That's the million-dollar question," Sullivan said grimly. "Intelligence suggests they believe he has access to something called Chimera, a classified surveillance system that was being developed at the time of Operation Deadfall." Olivia's head snapped up. "Chimera? I've never heard of it." "You weren't supposed to," Sullivan replied. "It was compartmentalized, need-to-know basis only, and your team didn't need to know. Your mission was to extract the asset who had information about Al-Shabaab's movements, not about Chimera." "So our mission was just cover for something bigger," Olivia said, the pieces falling into place. "And when it went sideways? When it went sideways, we had to make difficult decisions," Sullivan finished. "Decisions I stand by, even knowing what we know now about Specialist Diaz's survival." Olivia wanted to leap across the table and strangle him with her bare hands, but years of military discipline held her in check. "What exactly is Chimera, and why does Al-Shabaab think Marco has access to it?" Sullivan and Westfield exchanged glances. It was Westfield who answered. "Chimera is a surveillance system capable of accessing any network device anywhere in the world, regardless of security protocols. Phones, computers, cameras, even some vehicles and infrastructure systems. If it's connected to a network, Chimera can access it." "That's impossible," Olivia said flatly. "No system can bypass all security measures." "Nothing is impossible with the right resources and the right minds," Sullivan replied. "Chimera works. Or at least, the prototype did. The full system was never deployed because of concerns about its legality and potential for misuse. The project was officially shelved 5 years ago. Around the time of Operation Deadfall, Olivia noted. Convenient timing. The timing wasn't coincidental, the analyst interjected. The asset you were sent to extract was a former Chimera developer who had sold information about the system to Al-Shabaab. The extraction was meant to contain the leak before they could act on the information. But it was too late, Harlow added, speaking for the first time since the briefing began. They already knew about Chimera, and they knew enough to identify Marco as someone connected to the project. Olivia's mind raced. Marco wasn't involved with Chimera. He was intelligence, not tech development. No, but he had clearance to access certain Chimera files as part of his intelligence gathering, Sullivan explained. Al-Shabaab must believe he has knowledge of how to access or replicate the system. Does he? Olivia asked bluntly. Another exchange of glances between Sullivan and Westfield. Possibly, Sullivan admitted. All Chimera personnel were given emergency access protocols in case the system needed to be shut down remotely. If Marco retained that information, then Al-Shabaab has spent 5 years trying to extract it from him. Olivia finished, feeling sick at the thought of what Marco must have endured. And now, suddenly you're concerned enough to mount a rescue operation. Why now? What's changed? Chatter, the analyst replied. Intercepted communications suggesting that they've finally broken him, that they're close to accessing Chimera. If Al-Shabaab gains control of a system like Chimera, the security implications would be catastrophic, Westfield added. They could access military communications, intelligence databases, critical infrastructure controls. So this isn't about saving Marco, Olivia interrupted, her voice hard. It's about damage control, preventing a security breach. It's about both, Harlow said firmly. Marco is one of ours. We bring him home, and we prevent Chimera from falling into the wrong hands. 2 objectives, 1 mission. Olivia looked around the table, studying each face. Harlow seemed sincere, but then, he always had. The bearded operator watched her with the calculating gaze of someone assessing a potential ally or threat. The analyst's expression was professionally neutral, while Westfield projected the steady confidence of a career officer. Only Sullivan's face betrayed nothing. No emotion, no tells, nothing that would indicate whether he was telling the truth or orchestrating another betrayal. What's the plan? Olivia asked finally. If Marco was alive, if there was even a chance of bringing him home, she had to try, regardless of Sullivan's involvement or the broader implications of Chimera. Relief washed over Harlow's features, quickly masked by professional composure. Extraction team of 6, he said, slipping into briefing mode. Infiltration via halo jump near the Kenya-Somalia border, ground transport to the target facility, extract the package, exfiltration via helicopter to a waiting ship in international waters. Who's on the team? You're looking at most of them, Harlow replied. Myself as team lead. Captain Alex Foster here, he nodded to the bearded operator, is our weapons specialist and second in command. Lieutenant Samantha Ryan, the red-haired analyst, is our intelligence and communications expert, plus 2 more operators who are currently prepping the gear. And you, our transportation specialist and field medic. Olivia nodded, mentally cataloging strengths, weaknesses, contingencies. Timeline? Wheels up in 90 minutes, Westfield answered. You'll stage in Djibouti for 24 hours while final intelligence is gathered, then proceed with the operation. It was happening fast, too fast for comfort. Rapid deployment meant limited planning time, increased risk, greater reliance on adaptability in the field. But it also meant less time for Marco to suffer, less opportunity for something to go wrong with the intelligence or for Al-Shabaab to move him to another location. I have conditions, Olivia said, looking directly at Sullivan. I expected as much, he replied with a thin smile. Name them. I want the full file on Chimera, everything. No redactions, no omissions. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with, and why Al-Shabaab wants it badly enough to hold a prisoner for 5 years. Sullivan hesitated, then nodded. You'll be briefed on the flight. Not good enough, Olivia countered. I want the file now, before I step on that plane. The complete Chimera file is only accessible on secure networks, Sullivan explained. It can't be printed or transferred to portable media, but I give you my word that you'll have full access during transit. His word meant nothing to her. But Olivia recognized the security protocols involved with highly classified systems. It was a battle she wouldn't win. Fine. Second condition. When we get Marco out, he comes home with full honors, full benefits, and full disclosure about what happened in Somalia. No more cover-ups. No more ghost stories. Agreed, Sullivan said without hesitation, which immediately made Olivia suspicious. Anything else? Yes, she said, locking eyes with him. You stay the hell out of my way once the operation begins. No last-minute changes. No altered parameters. No suddenly unreachable command structure when things get hot. You give us the intelligence, the resources, and then you let us do our job. Sullivan's expression hardened. Operational control will remain with the team lead, as per standard protocol. But be clear, Nightshade. This mission has presidential authorization. The stakes extend far beyond your personal vendetta against me or your loyalty to Specialist Diaz. If at any point I determine that your actions are jeopardizing the primary objective is bringing Marco home. Olivia cut him off. Everything else is secondary. That's not your call to make, Sullivan replied coldly. Actually, it is, Harlow interjected, surprising everyone at the table. As team lead, my priority is the extraction of the American operative being held against his will. The intelligence concerns are secondary. Those are my orders, directly from Joint Special Operations Command. Sullivan's jaw tightened, but he didn't contradict Harlow. Instead, he gathered his papers and stood. I've arranged for your gear, and the desert night engulfed the C-17 Globemaster as it approached the airfield outside Djibouti City, the massive aircraft's engines throttling back for landing. Olivia sat strapped into her jump seat, eyes closed but fully alert, performing the mental preparation rituals that had once been as natural as breathing. 5 years of civilian life had dulled some edges, but the core remained, the ability to compartmentalize fear, to transform anxiety into focused energy, to prepare body and mind for what lay ahead. 10 minutes to touchdown, the loadmaster announced over the intercom. Secure all equipment and prepare for arrival. Olivia opened her eyes to find Harlow watching her from across the cargo hold. The SEAL commander had been unusually quiet during the 13-hour flight. Dividing his time between studying intelligence reports and engaged in hushed conversations with Captain Foster, the bearded Special Forces operator who would serve as his second-in-command. You good? Harlow asked, his voice pitched just loud enough to carry over the engine noise. I will be once we're on the ground, Olivia replied. Long flights and military transports had never been her favorite part of the job. She preferred to be behind the wheel, in control of her own movement. The plane touched down with a series of jolts, tires screeching against tarmac as the pilots applied reverse thrust to slow the massive aircraft. Through the small porthole window, Olivia could see the scattered lights of Camp Lemonnier, the U.S. military base that served as the hub for operations throughout the Horn of Africa. Somewhere beyond those lights, across the border in Somalia, Marco was waiting, whether he knew it or not. Remember, Harlow said as the plane taxied toward a hangar set apart from the main operations area. We're not officially here. This operation doesn't exist on any manifest or mission log. We're ghosts. Ghosts! The word sent a chill through Olivia, despite the stifling heat that greeted them as the cargo ramp lowered. Ghost Recon Unit 7 had earned their name by operating in the shadows, leaving no trace of their presence except for mission objectives accomplished with surgical precision. Now there were ghosts in a more literal sense, officially dead, moving through a world that had already mourned them and moved on. A lone figure waited beside 2 unmarked SUVs on the tarmac, a compact, muscular woman with short cropped hair and the weathered complexion of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. Recognition hit Olivia like a physical blow. Rodriguez, she whispered, hardly believing her eyes. Maria Rodriguez, callsign Dagger, had been Ghost Recon's explosives expert, the woman who could assemble or disassemble any device with her eyes closed if necessary. Olivia had seen her take a bullet to the thigh during the Somalia operation, had helped apply the tourniquet that saved her leg, but had been forced to leave her behind during the chaotic extraction. Rodriguez's face split into a wide grin as the team approached. Took you long enough, Nightshade, she said, embracing Olivia with surprising strength. "I was starting to think you'd decided to stay dead." "I could say the same about you," Olivia replied, returning the embrace before stepping back to examine her former teammate. Rodriguez looked good, lean and strong, with only a slight hitch in her gait to suggest the injury she'd sustained in Somalia. "How?" Later, Rodriguez interrupted, her expression turning serious as she nodded to Harlow. "Commander, the safe house is prepped, and I've got the latest intelligence ready for review." "Any changes to the target location?" Harlow asked as they loaded their gear into the SUVs. "Negative. The compound remains active, and satellite imagery confirms continued presence at the site. No unusual movement patterns that would suggest they're preparing to relocate." Rodriguez slid behind the wheel of the lead vehicle. "But there's something else you need to see. Something that wasn't in the initial intelligence package." The drive to the safe house took them through the outskirts of Djibouti City, a strange amalgamation of colonial architecture, modern development, and makeshift settlements that reflected the country's complex history. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the mingled scents of the sea, cooking fires, and diesel exhaust. Olivia watched through tinted windows as they passed markets closing for the night, groups of young men gathered around cafes, women carrying late shopping home to their families. Ordinary lives unfolding in a world that seemed impossibly distant from the classified operation they were about to undertake. The safe house was located in a walled compound in a quiet residential area, its unassuming exterior concealing a fully equipped operational center. Security cameras, motion sensors, and armed guards wearing civilian clothes provided layered protection, while the interior had been converted into a combination of living quarters and tactical operations center. "Home sweet home for the next 24 hours. Rodriguez announced as she led them through a series of security checkpoints and into the main briefing room. "Get settled, get hydrated, and meet back here in 20 for the updated briefing." Olivia found her assigned quarters, a sparse but functional room with a single bed, small desk, and attached bathroom. Someone had placed a fresh uniform, local currency, and a burner phone on the desk, along with a laminated card containing emergency extraction protocols. 5 years ago, such precautions would have been routine. Now they served as stark reminders of the world she'd re-entered. A world where contingency plans for worst-case scenarios weren't paranoia but professional necessity. After a quick shower to wash away the grime of travel, Olivia changed into fresh clothes and rejoined the team in the briefing room. The space was dominated by a large digital display showing satellite imagery of what she presumed was the target compound, a collection of buildings surrounded by a perimeter wall, located in rugged terrain near the Kenya-Somalia border. Rodriguez stood before the display, waiting until everyone was seated before beginning. "The intelligence was right about one thing," she said without preamble. "Marco is there." She tapped a tablet, and the display changed to show a grainy image of a man being escorted between buildings by armed guards. Despite the poor quality, there was no mistaking Marco's features or his distinctive gait. "This was captured by one of our surveillance drones 2 days ago," Rodriguez continued. "It's the most recent confirmed sighting we have." "He's walking," Olivia noted, relief washing through her. After 5 years of captivity, she had feared finding Marco too physically broken for extraction. "That's good." "Yes and no," Rodriguez replied grimly. She tapped the tablet again, and the display shifted to show a different angle of the compound. Specifically, what appeared to be a medical facility with sophisticated equipment visible through windows. "This is what wasn't in your briefing package. The compound isn't just a detention facility, it's a research center. They've been running medical tests on Marco." "What kind of tests?" Harlow asked, his voice tight. Rodriguez hesitated, then said, "Brain scans, primarily. And they've brought in specialized equipment in the past 3 months, equipment consistent with neural interface technology." The implications hit Olivia like a physical blow. "They're not trying to get him to tell them about Chimera," she said slowly. "They're trying to extract the information directly from his brain. That's our assessment," Rodriguez confirmed. "The good news is that this suggests he hasn't broken under conventional interrogation methods. The bad news is that this technology, while experimental, has shown some success in retrieving specific memory patterns, especially procedural memories like access codes or system protocols." How close are they? Lieutenant Ryan asked, her analyst's mind clearly already calculating timelines and probabilities. Hard to say with certainty, Rodriguez admitted, but based on the increased activity at the compound and the power consumption patterns, we believe they're in the final testing phases. They could attempt a full extraction within days. The room fell silent as the team absorbed this information. What had already been a high-stakes rescue operation had just become a race against time to prevent technology from accomplishing what 5 years of torture and interrogation had failed to do: breaking through Marco's mental defenses to access Chimera. This changes the insertion plan, Harlow said finally. We can't afford to wait for optimal conditions. We need to move now. I've already updated the operational timeline, Rodriguez replied. Weather conditions are favorable for a halo insertion tonight, approximately 30 kilometers from the target. Ground transport is secured and waiting at the DZ. We can be on target before dawn. Harlow looked around the table, making eye contact with each team member. Questions? Concerns? Now's the time. The medical equipment complicates extraction, Olivia pointed out. If they've been conducting neural procedures, Marco might not be in any condition to move under his own power. We need to prepare for a non-ambulatory extraction. Already factored in, Captain Foster spoke up. The extraction kit includes a tactical stretcher and additional medical supplies specifically for neurological trauma. Dr. Patel at the Naval Support Facility here has been briefed on potential medical needs without being informed of the specific operation. Olivia nodded, impressed by the thoroughness of the preparation. It seemed that Sullivan, or whoever was truly running this operation, had considered contingencies that she herself would have insisted upon. Which raised the question, just how crucial was Marco's rescue to their objectives? And why the urgency now after 5 years of inaction? One more thing, Rodriguez said, switching the display to show a man in civilian clothes supervising the movement of equipment into the compound. This is Dr. Nikolai Volkov, former neural researcher for the Russian FSB, now freelance consultant to the highest bidder. He arrived at the compound 3 weeks ago, coinciding with the final delivery of the neural interface equipment. Volkov's involvement suggests this isn't just Al-Shabaab anymore, Ryan observed. They don't have the resources or connections to hire someone of his caliber. Correct, Rodriguez confirmed. Intelligence indicates that while Al-Shabaab still controls the compound, they've partnered with at least one state actor who's providing technical expertise and funding in exchange for access to whatever they extract from Marco. Russia? Harlow suggested. Possible, but we don't think so, Rodriguez replied. Volkov left FSB service under, let's say, unfavorable circumstances. His current client list is rumored to include North Korea, Iran, and several private entities with connections to international arms dealers. So we're potentially dealing with multiple hostile interests converging on this compound, Olivia summarized, the tactical implications already forming in her mind. Which means security will be layered, with different factions potentially operating under different protocols. And potentially working at cross-purposes, Foster added, which we might be able to exploit. The briefing continued for another hour, covering insertion routes, compound layout, security patterns, and extraction plans in meticulous detail. Through it all, Olivia found herself slipping back into operational mindset with disturbing ease, as if the past 5 years had been merely a temporary assignment rather than an attempt at building a new life. When the formal briefing concluded, the team dispersed to make final preparations, checking equipment, reviewing assigned roles, mentally rehearsing the operation from start to finish. Olivia found herself drawn to the display showing Marco's image, studying the face of the friend she'd believed dead for 5 years. He never gave up hope that you were alive, Rodriguez said quietly, appearing beside her. Even when Sullivan told us you'd been killed during extraction. Olivia turned to her former teammate. What really happened that day, Maria? After I dragged Marco to the vehicle and tried to get him out, everything went dark. I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital with Sullivan telling me everyone else was dead. Rodriguez's expression hardened. They separated us. Those of us who made it out were sent to different locations, given new identities, told that the others hadn't survived. I ended up here, running local assets for JSOC under a cover identity. It wasn't until Harlow contacted me last week that I learned you and Marco had survived. Why the deception? Olivia pressed. What was Sullivan really after in Somalia? I don't know, Rodriguez admitted. But I've spent 5 years trying to find out. Whatever it was big enough that they were willing to sacrifice an entire special operations unit to keep it contained. And now they suddenly want Marco back, Olivia mused. Not because he's been suffering for 5 years, but because someone else might get their hands on whatever's in his head. Does it matter why they want him back? Rodriguez asked. The end result is the same. We get our friend out of that hellhole. Olivia considered this. It matters if we're walking into another trap, if Sullivan is using us to clean up loose ends. That's why I insisted on being part of the extraction team, Rodriguez said grimly. To make sure we all come home this time, not just the ones Sullivan decides are worth saving. The conversation was interrupted by Harlow announcing it was time for final gear check. As the team assembled their equipment, Olivia found herself watching Rodriguez with new eyes. The explosives expert had spent 5 years in this harsh environment, living under a false identity, perhaps searching for answers about what had really happened in Somalia. Her presence on the team was both reassuring and concerning. Another ally to trust, but also confirmation that Sullivan's official story was riddled with holes. Communications check, Ryan announced, distributing encrypted radio units. These operate on a frequency-hopping protocol that changes every 30 seconds. Even if they detect our transmission, they won't be able to maintain a lock long enough to triangulate our position. Olivia accepted her unit, noting the modifications that hadn't been available 5 years ago. Smaller, lighter, with better range and battery life. Technology had advanced while she'd been driving delivery trucks across the American Southwest, creating both new opportunities and new challenges for operations like this one. Vehicle specialists, Foster called, beckoning Olivia over to where he'd laid out maps of the terrain surrounding the target compound. We've got 2 options for ground approach after the halo insertion. The main road, which gives us better speed but higher visibility, or this ravine system, which provides cover but will slow us down considerably. Olivia studied the maps, her mind automatically calculating travel times, visibility factors, and potential choke points. The ravine, she decided, will need to modify the vehicles for the terrain, but the cover is worth the reduced speed. Besides, we'll be moving in darkness until we reach this ridge here, which gives us an observation point for the final approach. Foster nodded in agreement. That's what I thought too. I've already had the vehicles prepped for off-road conditions, reinforced suspension, run-flat tires, extra fuel capacity. As the final preparations continued, Olivia found herself drawn once again to the image of Marco on the display. 5 years of captivity had left their mark. He was thinner, his posture slightly stooped, his eyes holding a wariness that hadn't been there before. But he was alive, and within hours, she would be leading the team that would bring him home. We're going to get him out, Harlow said, appearing beside her. I give you my word. Olivia met his gaze steadily. Don't make promises you can't keep, Commander. Just tell me one thing. Do you trust Sullivan? Harlow considered the question carefully before answering. I trust that his objectives currently align with ours. Beyond that, let's just say I've made sure we have options if his priorities suddenly change. It wasn't exactly the reassurance Olivia wanted, but it was honest, and honesty was a rare commodity in their world. She nodded her acknowledgement and returned to her preparations, checking and rechecking her gear with the methodical precision that had once been second nature. The call to move out came just after midnight. The team loaded into a transport helicopter that would take them to the jump point, each member performing final equipment checks in the red-tinged darkness of the aircraft's interior. The familiar pre-mission tension hung in the air, a potent mixture of focused anticipation, controlled fear, and grim determination. Remember, Harlow shouted over the roar of the engines as the helicopter lifted off. Primary objective is the extraction of the American operative. Secondary objective is the neutralization of the neural interface equipment to prevent data retrieval. Everything else is tertiary. Olivia nodded, her mind already shifting into operational mode, breaking down the complex mission into manageable components. Get to the DZ. Secure ground transport. Approach the compound. Neutralize threats. Locate Marco. Extract safely. Simple steps that would require split-second decisions and perfect execution in an environment where anything could go wrong. The helicopter climbed into the night sky, banking toward the Somalia border as the lights of Djibouti City receded behind them. Beside her, Rodriguez checked her parachute straps one last time, her face set in the calm expression of a professional preparing for the job she'd been trained to do. "Just like old times," Rodriguez commented with a grim smile. But it wasn't like old times. 5 years ago, they'd jumped into Somalia, believing they were conducting a straightforward extraction of an intelligence asset. They'd had no idea they were pawns in a larger game involving Chimera and whatever else Sullivan had been hiding from them. This time, they were jumping in with eyes wide open, aware that the official briefing likely contained as many lies as truths. The jumpmaster signaled 5 minutes to the drop zone. Olivia performed one final check of her oxygen mask and altimeter. The halo jump would take them from 30,000 feet to just 800 feet above ground level before they deployed their chutes, allowing them to enter Somali airspace undetected by radar or ground observers. 1 minute, the jumpmaster shouted, and the team lined up at the open door. The bitter cold of high altitude bit through their jumpsuits despite the insulation, a sharp contrast to the desert heat that would greet them on the ground. Harlow was first in line, then Foster, Ryan, the 2 additional operators Olivia now knew as Miller and Jackson, followed by Rodriguez. Olivia would jump last, a position she'd always preferred, allowing her to watch the team's descent and adjust her own trajectory accordingly. The green light flashed, and Harlow disappeared into the darkness. One by one, the team followed, black-clad figures swallowed by the night. When Rodriguez stepped off, Olivia moved to the doorway, paused for a heartbeat, and jumped. The freefall was exactly as she remembered it, the initial stomach-dropping sensation giving way to a strange serenity as her body assumed the proper position, arms and legs spread to control her descent. Through her night vision goggles, she could see the tiny dots of her teammates below her, falling in perfect formation toward the dark landscape of Somalia. For these brief moments, suspended between sky and earth, Olivia felt a clarity that had been missing from her life for 5 years. Here, hurtling through space at terminal velocity, there was no room for doubt or regret, or the complicated moral questions that had driven her into self-imposed exile. There was only the mission, the team, and the absolute focus required to stay alive. Her altimeter beeped a warning, and Olivia reached for her ripcord. The parachute deployed with a reassuring snap, the sudden deceleration pulling against her harness as she transitioned from freefall to controlled descent. Below, she could see the other chutes already deployed. Dark canopies barely visible against the night sky. The landing zone appeared in her night vision as a clearing among scattered vegetation, a dry riverbed that would provide immediate cover after touchdown. Olivia steered toward it, adjusting for the slight crosswind and prepared for landing. Her boots touched Somali soil with a practiced roll to absorb the impact. Within seconds, she had collapsed her chute and moved to the rally point where Harlow was already conducting a head count. "All present," he confirmed as Olivia joined them. "Gear check." Each team member reported their status. All equipment intact, no injuries from the jump. Ryan was already setting up a compact satellite communication system to confirm their position and receive any last-minute intelligence updates before they moved to secure the vehicles. "Ground transport is 800 meters east," Foster reported, consulting his GPS. 2 modified SUVs, fully fueled and equipped as requested. "Move out," Harlow ordered. "Standard patrol formation. Ryan on point, Jackson on rear guard." The team moved through the darkness with practiced efficiency, each member maintaining proper spacing and sector coverage as they navigated the unfamiliar terrain. Despite 5 years away from operations, Olivia found her body remembering the rhythms of movement, the silent communication of hand signals, the heightened awareness that kept special operators alive in hostile territory. They reached the vehicles without incident, 2 rugged SUVs concealed under camouflage netting in a shallow depression. Local assets had delivered them exactly as specified, with the modifications Foster had requested and the additional equipment they would need for the extraction. "Nightshade, you're on lead vehicle," Harlow directed. "Rodriguez, Miller, and I will ride with you. Foster takes the second vehicle with Ryan and Jackson. Standard comms protocol from here on, mission-critical transmissions only." Olivia slid behind the wheel of the lead SUV, her hands automatically adjusting the seat and mirrors as Rodriguez took the passenger position beside her. The vehicle felt good under her control, responsive and powerful, with the suspension modifications that would allow them to navigate the rough terrain of the ravine approach. "Ready when you are," she reported, starting the engine. Its purr was muffled by the specialized exhaust system designed to reduce noise signature. "Move out," Harlow ordered from the back seat. 20 kilometers to observation point Alpha. Maintain blackout conditions until we clear the border region. Olivia engaged the drive and eased the SUV forward, night vision allowing her to navigate without headlights. Behind them, Foster followed in the second vehicle, maintaining proper distance for dust control and tactical spacing. As they moved deeper into Somalia, following the ravine system that would lead them to the observation point overlooking the target compound, Olivia felt the last vestiges of her civilian identity falling away. Olivia Reeves, delivery driver, had disappeared completely, replaced by Nightshade, the woman who could drive through hell to bring her people home. And somewhere ahead, in a compound filled with enemies and experimental technology designed to extract the secrets from his mind, Marco was waiting. Whether he knew help was coming or had long since abandoned hope, Olivia was determined to fulfill the promise that had bound their unit together. No one left behind. Not this time. The observation point provided a clear view of the compound through the pre-dawn darkness. Olivia lay prone beside Harlow, studying the target through high-powered night vision binoculars. The facility was smaller than it had appeared in satellite imagery, a main building surrounded by 3 smaller structures, all enclosed within a perimeter wall topped with razor wire. Guard towers stood at each corner, manned by sentries whose patrol patterns Olivia had been timing for the past 20 minutes. 12 guards visible on the exterior, she reported quietly. 2-man teams rotating clockwise at 7-minute intervals. Main entrance is covered by a machine gun nest, but the service entrance on the east side appears to have lighter security. Harlow nodded, making notes on a weatherproof tablet. Any sign of Volkov or the neural equipment? Negative. But that building there, Olivia pointed to a structure set slightly apart from the others, has reinforced power lines running to it and a dedicated generator. That's likely where they're keeping the specialized equipment. And presumably where they're keeping Marco, Rodriguez added from her position a few feet away, where she was assembling what appeared to be a modified drone. The power requirements for neural interface technology would necessitate proximity to the subject. Ryan crawled up beside them, her communication gear contained in a compact backpack. "Surveillance drone is picking up radio traffic inside the compound," she reported. "Mostly routine communications, but there's mention of the procedure scheduled for 0900 hours. Olivia checked her watch, 0415. Less than 5 hours before whatever they had planned for Marco. "We move now," Harlow decided. "Original infiltration plan with one modification. Rodriguez, I want that generator neutralized as our first action, not as part of the exfiltration. If they're planning something for 0900, I want their equipment dead before they can start. I can deliver a localized EMP that will fry their systems without damaging adjacent structures," Rodriguez confirmed. "But it'll alert them immediately that they're under attack. Which is why we'll hit all 4 guard towers simultaneously," Harlow replied. "Miller, Jackson, Foster, and I will take the towers. Ryan maintains communication coordination from this position. Nightshade, once the perimeter is secured, you and Rodriguez go directly for the target building. Primary objective is recovering Diaz. Secondary is ensuring all neural interface equipment is destroyed. The plan was sound, a coordinated strike that would neutralize the compound's defenses and knock out their specialized equipment before they could react. But something bothered Olivia, a detail that didn't align with the intelligence they'd been given. "The security is too light," she said, continuing to scan the compound. "If they've really got Marco here, if they're really on the verge of extracting Chimera access protocols from his brain, there should be more protection. This looks like standard security for a mid-level Al-Shabaab outpost, not a high-value research facility." Harlow frowned, reassessing the compound through his own binoculars. "Could be most of their security is internal, focused on the specific building housing Diaz and the equipment. Or it could be a trap," Rodriguez suggested bluntly. "Maybe Sullivan fed us bad intel again. Or maybe the real security isn't visible," Ryan interjected. "The drone's thermal imaging is showing some anomalies, heat signatures that don't match human bodies or known equipment. They could have automated defense systems or remotely operated weapons platforms." Olivia considered this. Advanced security systems would explain the relatively light human presence, but would also significantly complicate their infiltration. "Can you identify what kind of systems we're dealing with?" Ryan shook her head. Not definitively, without closer observation, but the pattern suggests motion-activated defenses, possibly with some form of AI targeting capability. We've dealt with worse, Harlow decided after a moment's consideration. The plan remains, with additional caution for automated defenses. Rodriguez, can you use the EMP to neutralize electronic security systems as well as the generator? If I recalibrate the yield, yes, Rodriguez confirmed, but it'll mean a larger signature and potential collateral damage to other systems we might want to preserve, like any computers containing intelligence we could extract. Marco is the priority, Harlow stated firmly. If we have to choose between potential intelligence and ensuring his safe extraction, we choose him. Recalibrate the EMP. As Rodriguez made the necessary adjustments to her device, Olivia continued studying the compound, mentally mapping approach routes and potential extraction paths. The terrain offered decent cover to within 100 meters of the perimeter wall, after which they would be exposed during the final approach. The eastern side, where the service entrance was located, provided the best combination of cover and lighter security. I count 3 vehicles inside the compound, she noted. 2 jeeps and what looks like a modified ambulance near the building we've identified as our primary target. That could be our extraction vehicle if ours are compromised. Good catch, Harlow acknowledged. We'll designate that as contingency transport if needed. Now, final comms check and weapons verification. We move in 15 minutes. The team conducted their final preparations with practiced efficiency, each member checking their weapons, communication devices, and specialized equipment. Olivia verified the medical kit she would carry, expanded from standard field medical to include treatments for neurological trauma and sedatives that might be necessary if Marco was in an unstable condition. Remember, Harlow said as they prepared to move out, this isn't just an extraction. This is about bringing one of our own home after 5 years in hell. Whatever happens in there, whatever state we find him in, we all come back together. The simple statement carried weight beyond the immediate mission. It was an acknowledgement of their shared past, of the betrayal in Somalia, and a commitment that this time would be different. This time, no one would be left behind. The team moved out in practiced formation, using the natural terrain for cover as they approached the compound. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Not enough to compromise their stealth approach, but a reminder that time was limited. Once dawn broke fully, their tactical advantage would diminish significantly. At the 100-meter mark, they paused for final position confirmation. From this distance, Olivia could see details that hadn't been visible from the observation point. Additional sensors along the perimeter wall, a communications array on the main building's roof, and what appeared to be recently installed reinforcements around the target building's entrance. Final positions, Harlow whispered into his comm. On my mark, simultaneous strikes on all guard towers. Rodriguez deploys the EMP immediately after. Nightshade, you and I breach the east entrance as soon as the perimeter is secure. Acknowledgements came in from each team member. Olivia drew her sidearm, a suppressed .45 caliber handgun that was standard for operations where stealth was crucial. Her primary weapon, an MP7 submachine gun, remained slung across her back, reserved for situations where the engagement had already gone loud. 3, 2, 1, mark. Harlow counted down. 4 suppressed shots cracked almost simultaneously, each finding its target with lethal precision. The guards in the tower slumped over, taken out before they could raise an alarm. Immediately after, Rodriguez activated her device, sending a targeted electromagnetic pulse toward the compound. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The compound's external lights, which had been illuminating the perimeter, went dark. The quiet hum of electronic systems that had been barely audible fell silent. Even the radio chatter that Ryan had been monitoring ceased abruptly. EMP successful, Rodriguez reported. All electronic systems within the target radius are offline. Quote, move, Harlow ordered, and the team advanced rapidly toward the perimeter wall. Foster deployed a lightweight carbon fiber ladder that allowed them to scale the 3-meter wall without leaving permanent equipment that might be spotted by reinforcements. One by one, they dropped into the compound, each taking up predetermined security positions to cover their advance. Olivia and Harlow moved directly toward the target building, while Rodriguez split off to verify that the generator and neural equipment had been successfully neutralized. The compound remained eerily quiet. No alarms, no shouting guards, no signs of the automated defense systems Ryan had detected. This is too easy, Olivia muttered, as they reached the building's entrance without encountering resistance. "Stay focused," Harlow replied, though his tone suggested he shared her concern. Maybe the EMP was more effective than we anticipated. The door was locked but yielded quickly to Foster's breaching tools. Harlow entered first, weapon raised, with Olivia close behind. The interior was dimly lit by emergency lighting running on battery backup. The EMP had knocked out the main power, but not these secondary systems. They moved through a series of corridors, checking rooms as they went. Most were standard operational spaces, offices, storage areas, a small mess hall, all deserted at this early hour. But as they approached the center of the building, they encountered the first signs of the facility's true purpose: medical equipment, monitoring stations, and what appeared to be a control room filled with specialized computers. "Rodriguez, status report," Harlow whispered into his comm. "Generator is confirmed offline," she replied. "Neural interface equipment has been located and disabled. No sign of hostile forces in this section. Ryan, any movement on the perimeter?" "Negative, Commander," came the response from their communications specialist at the observation point. "No approach vehicles, no reinforcements. The compound remains isolated." The lack of resistance was becoming more concerning with each passing moment. An operation of this significance should have had multiple layers of security, contingency plans for power loss, armed response teams ready to deploy at the first sign of intrusion. Instead, they had encountered nothing but empty rooms and disabled equipment. "They knew we were coming," Olivia realized suddenly. "This is an elaborate setup." Before Harlow could respond, they reached a heavily reinforced door at the end of a corridor. Unlike the other doors they'd encountered, this one featured a sophisticated biometric lock that had been unaffected by the EMP. It must have been on a shielded circuit with its own power supply. "This is it," Harlow said, examining the lock. "Foster, we need a bypass." The team's breaching specialist joined them, studying the system with a practiced eye. "This is military grade," he observed. "Not something you'd typically find in a terrorist compound. I can get through it, but it'll take time." "We may not have time," Olivia replied, her instincts screaming that something was very wrong with the entire operation. "If this is a trap, then we spring it on our terms," Harlow decided. "Foster, bypass the lock. Rodriguez, plant charges on our exit route in case we need to create a diversion. Miller, Jackson, secure our perimeter and prepare for potential hostile contact." As the team moved to execute these orders, Olivia continued scanning their surroundings, looking for any clue about what might be waiting for them beyond that reinforced door. The facility's layout, the sophisticated security measures, the complete lack of resistance, none of it aligned with the intelligence they'd been given about a hastily established research outpost run by Al-Shabaab and their mysterious partners. Foster worked methodically on the biometric lock, connecting a specialized device that would cycle through potential access combinations at high speed. "This would be easier if we had a friendly fingerprint or retinal pattern," he commented. "Dr. Volkov should be here somewhere," Olivia pointed out. "If we could locate him." "Got it." Foster interrupted as the lock emitted a soft click and the indicator light changed from red to green. "We're in." Harlow positioned himself to be first through the door, with Olivia and Foster providing cover. "On 3, he whispered. 1, 2, 3. The doors swung open to reveal not the research lab or detention cell they had expected, but a sophisticated command center. Multiple screens displayed what appeared to be live feeds from various locations, including, Olivia realized with a shock, their observation point where Ryan was stationed, the ravine they had traversed to approach the compound, and the positions where Miller and Jackson were currently securing the perimeter. And seated calmly at the center of this command center, watching their entry without surprise, was a man Olivia recognized immediately, despite the 5 years that had passed: Marco Diaz. But this wasn't the captive they had come to rescue. This Marco was clean-shaven, well-dressed in tactical clothing and showing none of the physical deterioration they would expect from someone held prisoner for 5 years. He regarded them with a cold detachment that bore no resemblance to the warm, quick-witted teammate Olivia had known. "Commander Harlow," Marco acknowledged with a slight nod. "Right on schedule. And Nightshade, I was particularly interested to see if you would come. Sullivan was confident you would, once you believed I needed rescuing." Olivia felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. The room seemed to spin as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. "Marco, what is this? What's happening?" "This, old friend, is what we call a controlled environment assessment," Marco replied, his voice carrying none of the emotion one would expect from a reunion with former teammates believed dead. "An opportunity to observe how certain operatives respond to specific stimuli and mission parameters." "You're working with Sullivan," Harlow stated, his weapon still raised but his voice betraying his shock. "All of this, the intelligence about your captivity, the neural interface technology, the urgent extraction timeline, it was all fabricated." "Not fabricated," Marco corrected, "curated. There is indeed neural interface technology involved, though not in the way you are led to believe. And there was urgency, just not for the reasons you were given." Olivia struggled to make sense of what she was hearing. The Marco she had known, the man she had dragged, bleeding and barely conscious, across 50 yards of open ground in Somalia, would never have participated in such an elaborate deception against his own team. "Why?" she demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "What could possibly justify this?" Marco's expression softened slightly, the first hint of the person she had once known. "Because Chimera is real, Olivia, and it's active. But it's not what you were told. It's not just a surveillance system. It's an artificial intelligence program designed to identify and neutralize potential threats to national security before they materialize." "Precognitive threat assessment," Foster murmured, lowering his weapon slightly as understanding dawned. "The intelligence community has been theorizing about it for years, but the ethical implications are significant," Marco acknowledged, "which is why its existence has been compartmentalized to the highest levels. The Somalia operation 5 years ago wasn't about extracting an asset with information about al-Shabaab. It was about recovering a Chimera developer who had ethical concerns about the system and was planning to expose it." Olivia's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of truth within the elaborate fiction they'd been fed. The ambush, the communication blackout, Sullivan disavowing us. It was all to maintain the cover story about Chimera. "And to test your loyalty," Marco added. "Those who survived were evaluated for potential inclusion in the program. Some, like Rodriguez, were reassigned to continue their service in new capacities. Others, like you, were allowed to believe a version of events that would lead you away from asking further questions." "Until now," Harlow concluded, "so why bring us in now? Why this elaborate charade?" Marco stood, walking to one of the displays showing satellite imagery of what appeared to be military installations in various locations around the world. "Because Chimera has identified a threat pattern that requires operators with your specific skills and experience. Particularly yours, Nightshade." "My skills?" Olivia repeated incredulously. "I've been driving delivery trucks for 5 years. Whatever skills I had have degraded significantly." "Have they?" Marco challenged, gesturing to the screens showing their approach to the compound. "You adapted to the terrain, identified the optimal entry point, recognized that the security was inconsistent with the briefing, and still executed the mission despite your suspicions. Your instincts remain intact, even after years of disuse." Harlow had lowered his weapon but remained alert, his expression calculating as he processed this new information. "You could have simply recruited us. Approached us directly with the truth, instead of this elaborate deception. Would you have believed us?" Marco asked simply. "After Somalia, after 5 years of believing you'd been betrayed, would any of you have trusted a direct approach from Sullivan or anyone associated with the program?" He had a point, Olivia had to admit. Her reaction to Sullivan in the briefing room at Nellis had demonstrated her lingering distrust. If they had approached her directly, told her that Marco was alive and working for a classified AI program designed to predict and prevent security threats, she would have assumed it was another manipulation, another trap. "So what happens now?" she asked, holstering her weapon as the immediate threat had clearly passed. "You've confirmed that we still have the skills you're looking for. Do we get a real briefing on this real mission, or are there more tests to pass?" Marco exchanged a glance with Harlow, and Olivia suddenly realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. Harlow had known. The SEAL commander hadn't been surprised by Marco's appearance or his revelation about Chimera. He had been part of the deception all along. "You son of a bitch," she breathed, turning to Harlow. "You knew." The gas station, the reactivation code, the urgency. It was all part of the script. Not all of it, Harlow replied, having the grace to look somewhat apologetic. The threat is real. The need for your specific skills is real. The method of bringing you in, that was tactical necessity. Before Olivia could respond, the door behind them opened, and Rodriguez entered, her expression unreadable as she took in the scene. "I see we've reached the revelation portion of the program," she commented dryly. "Miller and Jackson are securing the perimeter, and Ryan reports no movement in the surrounding area. We're clear for now." "You knew too," Olivia accused, feeling increasingly isolated as more pieces of the deception became clear. "How long have you been part of this, Maria?" 3 years. Rodriguez admitted without apology. "After I completed my rehabilitation, Sullivan approached me with the truth about Chimera and offered me a place in the program. Given the alternative of spending the rest of my life believing my teammates had died for nothing, I accepted." Marco turned to one of the control panels and activated a secure communication channel. "Asset Nightshade has been successfully recovered and briefed on Phase 1, he reported. Proceeding with Phase 2 briefing and full disclosure. Acknowledged, came a familiar voice that sent a chill down Olivia's spine. Commencing secure data transfer for Phase 2 operational parameters. Sullivan. Of course, he was monitoring the operation in real time, probably from some comfortable office thousands of miles away. "I want the whole truth," Olivia demanded, addressing both Marco and the disembodied voice of Sullivan. "No more compartmentalized information, no more need-to-know basis. If you want me involved in whatever this is, I need to understand exactly what I'm signing up for." There was a pause, then Sullivan's voice again. "Proceed with full disclosure, Diaz. Asset Nightshade has earned that much." Marco nodded and gestured for everyone to take seats around the central table. As they did, the displays around them changed to show what appeared to be a global threat assessment matrix, red indicators clustered in specific regions, with data streams showing movement patterns, communication intercepts, and predictive models. Chimera was originally designed as a passive surveillance system, Marco began, his tone shifting to the analytical one Olivia remembered from countless mission briefings in the past. But as the AI evolved, it developed predictive capabilities beyond what its creators had anticipated. It began identifying threat patterns before they fully manifested. Terrorist cells in the early stages of formation, coup attempts still in the planning phase, cyber attack frameworks being assembled. "Minority Report," Foster murmured, referencing the science fiction concept of preventing crimes before they occurred. "Similar in concept, though Chimera doesn't predict individual actions so much as systemic patterns," Marco clarified. "It analyzes vast amounts of data, communications, financial transactions, travel patterns, social media activity, and identifies convergences that human analysts would miss." "And you're using this to prevent threats before they materialize," Olivia concluded. "Playing global whack-a-mole with potential security risks." "That was the initial application," Rodriguez confirmed. "Small teams like ours would be deployed to disrupt identified threat patterns, sometimes through direct action, sometimes through more subtle interventions that would alter the trajectory of events without revealing our involvement." "But something's changed," Harlow interjected, bringing the conversation back to the immediate situation. "Chimera has identified a threat pattern that requires Nightshade's specific capabilities." Marco nodded, his expression grave as he turned to Olivia. 3 months ago, Chimera began tracking an unusual pattern of activities centered around autonomous vehicle systems. Specifically, the kind of secure transport used by high-value political and military leaders. The pattern suggests a coordinated attempt to compromise these systems for a synchronized attack. A decapitation strike, Olivia realized, the tactical implications immediately clear. Take out multiple leaders simultaneously by turning their own secure transport against them. "Exactly," Marco confirmed. "The technical aspects of the threat are complex, but the execution would be relatively simple once the systems are compromised. Vehicles programmed to crash, to drive into ambushes, or simply to deliver their passengers to waiting extraction teams. And you need me because you're not just a driver, Nightshade," Marco replied. "You're the best tactical driver the program has ever produced. With additional training in vehicle security systems and counter-hijacking protocols. More importantly, you understand how to think like the people planning this attack, how to anticipate their movements, identify their vulnerabilities, and neutralize their advantage before they can execute. Olivia absorbed this, her tactical mind already processing the challenge despite her lingering anger at the deception. You said this threat pattern emerged 3 months ago. Why the urgency now? Marco tapped a command, and the displays shifted to show a timeline with a rapidly approaching marker. Chimera's predictive models indicate a 94% probability that the attack will be executed within the next 72 hours, coinciding with the G20 summit in Singapore. 15 world leaders will be using autonomous vehicle systems to travel between secure locations during that time. Jesus, Foster muttered. The potential casualties go far beyond the immediate targets. Rodriguez finished grimly. The geopolitical chaos from a synchronized attack on multiple world leaders would destabilize global security for years. Financial markets would collapse, military forces would go on high alert, retaliatory strikes would be launched against perceived perpetrators. World War III by proxy, Harlow summarized. And we have 72 hours to prevent it. The magnitude of the threat momentarily overshadowed Olivia's sense of betrayal. Whatever her personal feelings about the methods used to bring her in, the stakes were too high to walk away now. But she still had questions, important ones that needed answers before she could fully commit. If Chimera is so advanced, if it can predict these threat patterns with such precision, why can't it identify exactly who is behind this attack and where they're operating from? She challenged. Why do you need human operators at all? Because Chimera has limitations, Marco admitted. It excels at identifying patterns and probabilities, but it cannot replicate human intuition or adaptability in the field. It can tell us that an attack is being prepared and provide parameters about its likely form, but it cannot identify specific individuals behind it or predict how they will react to countermeasures. That's where we come in, Rodriguez added. Human operators guided by Chimera's analytics but making real-time decisions based on ground truth and tactical experience. Olivia nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. So the real mission isn't in Somalia at all. It's in Singapore, preventing this attack on the G20 leadership. Correct, Harlow confirmed. This facility was just a staging area, a controlled environment to verify your capabilities and provide the initial briefing away from potential surveillance. And the whole story about Marco being held captive, about neural interface technology, extracting Chimera access protocols from his brain, that was all fabricated to give me a personal stake in the mission, to ensure I would come willingly. Marco had the decency to look somewhat apologetic. We needed you committed, Olivia. The psychological profile suggested you would respond more strongly to a personal appeal, a teammate in danger, than to abstract threats to national security. You manipulated me, Olivia stated flatly, used my loyalty against me. Yes, Marco acknowledged without attempting to justify it further, and I'll do it again if that's what it takes to prevent what's coming. The question is, now that you know the truth, are you in or out? It was the most direct question anyone had asked her since Harlow had approached her at that gas station in Nevada. After all the deception, all the layers of manipulation and half-truths, Marco was finally offering her a clear choice. Olivia looked around at the faces watching her, Marco, Harlow, Rodriguez, Foster, all people who had made their own choices to be part of this program, this mission. They had accepted the moral ambiguity, the necessary deceptions, the compartmentalized truths that came with operating at this level of national security. Could she do the same? After 5 years of trying to build a simple, honest life away from the complexities of covert operations and classified programs, the display surrounding them continued to show the threat matrix Chimera had identified, the red indicators pulsing with ominous regularity, the countdown to the G20 summit ticking relentlessly forward. 72 hours until a coordinated attack that could reshape the global order, potentially leading to conflict on a scale not seen in generations. I'm in, Olivia said finally, her decision made not for Sullivan or Chimera or even for her former teammates, but for the simple reason that had always driven her, the commitment to prevent harm when it was within her power to do so. But from now on, no more lies. I need to know exactly what I'm walking into and why. Agreed, Marco replied with visible relief. Full operational disclosure from this point forward. Sullivan's voice came through the communication system once more. Transport to Singapore is standing by. Complete briefing materials will be provided en route. Welcome back to the program, Nightshade. Olivia ignored Sullivan's attempt at camaraderie. Let's be clear about one thing, she said, addressing everyone in the room but particularly Marco. I'm doing this to prevent an attack that could cost thousands of lives and trigger global conflict. I'm not rejoining any program, and I'm certainly not doing this for Sullivan or whoever else is running Chimera now. When this mission is complete, we revisit my status. Understood? Understood, Marco confirmed, though something in his expression suggested he knew, perhaps better than Olivia herself, that once back in the field, once fully engaged in an operation of this magnitude, the skills and instincts she had suppressed for 5 years would reassert themselves completely. The delivery driver might never return. Then let's get moving, Olivia said, already shifting mentally from the betrayal she had experienced to the mission that lay ahead. We've got a world to save and not much time to do it. As they prepared to depart the facility for the extraction point where their transport to Singapore awaited, Olivia found herself walking alongside Marco, finally having a moment to process the reality that her friend was not only alive, but had been actively involved in the program that had led to their supposed deaths in Somalia. For what it's worth, Marco said quietly, I argued against using the personal appeal. I thought you deserved the truth from the beginning. But you went along with it anyway, Olivia noted, neither accusation nor forgiveness in her tone, merely observation. Yes, he admitted. Because Chimera gave the approach a 78% probability of success, compared to 23% for direct recruitment. And because, whatever else has changed, I still believe in the work we're doing, preventing threats before they materialize, saving lives that would otherwise be lost. Olivia considered this as they exited the building into the early morning light now spreading across the compound. The rest of the team was already loading equipment into the vehicles they would use to reach their extraction point. Do you ever wonder, she asked, if we're crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed? Using systems like Chimera to identify threats before they exist? Taking action based on probabilities rather than established facts? Marco paused, giving the question the serious consideration it deserved. Every day, he answered finally. I question the ethics, the implications, the potential for abuse. But then I see the attacks we've prevented, the lives we've saved, and I ask myself, what's the alternative? Wait until after the bomb detonates, after the assassination succeeds, after the damage is done? It was the central moral question at the heart of programs like Chimera, Olivia realized. The balance between preemptive action and established threat, between security and liberty, between what could be done with such technology and what should be done. I don't have an answer, she admitted, but I know that right now there are people planning to kill world leaders and potentially trigger global conflict. And if I can help stop that, then the philosophical questions will have to wait. Marco nodded, a hint of the old warmth returning to his eyes. That's why Chimera identified you as essential to this mission, Nightshade, not just for your tactical driving skills, but for your clarity of purpose when it matters most. As they joined the others at the vehicles, Harlow approached with a satellite phone. Final instructions from command, he reported. Our exfil has been moved up. Transport leaves in 90 minutes from the secondary LZ. We need to move now. The urgency in his voice confirmed what Olivia already suspected. The countdown to whatever was planned for the G20 summit had begun in earnest. The philosophical questions about Chimera, the lingering feelings of betrayal over the deception used to bring her in, even her own uncertain future once this mission was complete, all would have to wait. Right now, there was only the mission, the team, and the race against time to prevent a catastrophe that most of the world didn't even know was coming. Olivia slid behind the wheel of the lead vehicle, her hands finding their natural position as muscle memory took over. 5 years of civilian driving had not diminished her ability to read terrain, anticipate challenges, and find the optimal route through hostile territory. Ready when you are, Nightshade, Marco said, from the passenger seat beside her, using her operational name with a respect that acknowledged her expertise despite the years away. Olivia engaged the drive and accelerated smoothly away from the compound, already calculating routes and contingencies as they began the journey that would take them from this isolated corner of Somalia to Singapore, and to the mission that would determine whether her return to operational status was temporary or permanent. Just like old times, she murmured, more to herself than to Marco. But it wasn't like old times. She was different now. More cautious, more questioning, less willing to accept orders without understanding their full implications. And the world they operated in had changed too, with systems like Chimera shifting the very nature of intelligence gathering and threat response. What remained the same was the core principle that had always guided her: protect those who cannot protect themselves, prevent harm whenever possible, and never ever leave anyone behind. As the Somali landscape blurred around them, Olivia felt a clarity of purpose that had been missing from her life for 5 years. Whatever came next, in Singapore, with Chimera, with her own future, she would face it with the same determination that had once made her the best tactical driver in the program. Nightshade was back in the driver's seat, and this time she was steering her own course. Singapore glittered beneath the evening sky, its skyline a testament to human ambition and architectural ingenuity. From the 47th floor of the Marina Bay Hotel, Olivia had a perfect view of the city's most iconic structures: the triple towers of the Marina Bay Sands crowned by their stunning sky park, the lotus-shaped Art Science Museum, and the futuristic domes of gardens by the bay. Beautiful, inspiring, and in less than 24 hours potentially the site of a coordinated attack that could destabilize the entire global order. "Final equipment check," Harlow announced, interrupting Olivia's contemplation of the cityscape. The team had taken over a luxury suite that now resembled a tactical operations center more than 5-star accommodations. Surveillance equipment, communication systems, and weapons disguised as ordinary luggage were arranged around the space with military precision. As the reorganized presidential security detail moved out, Olivia started her engine once more, preparing to head for the traffic management center where her teammates might still be fighting, or worse. "Ready?" she asked Marco, who had finished coordinating with Ryan and Foster. "Ready," he confirmed. "Foster and Ryan will meet us there. They've managed to re-establish partial network monitoring and are seeing continued attempts to access the system, which suggests the center hasn't been completely overtaken." Olivia pulled away from the intercept site, navigating through streets now filled with emergency vehicles and security checkpoints. The Chimera device continued updating, processing new data and adjusting its threat assessment accordingly. "You know," Marco said as they drove, "Chimera gave your intercept maneuver only a 42% chance of success, but you executed it perfectly." Director Harlow observed from the back of the room, her presence confirming the program's significance within evolving military doctrine. Following the 800-meter operation, Pinnacle had been authorized to establish specialized training protocols integrating unconventional expertise into formal military capability development. "The limitations we've accepted aren't physical constants but knowledge boundaries," Morgan explained to operators selected for their exceptional potential. "With proper environmental reading, shots considered impossible become achievable through specialized expertise properly applied." As the training program progressed, Morgan worked directly with operators who demonstrated particular aptitude for environmental reading. Among them was Peterson, whose natural intuition for atmospheric conditions had earned him selection as an instructor candidate to help propagate specialized knowledge throughout military special operations. "The institutional evolution is remarkable," he noted during an evening review session. 6 months ago, your expertise was utilized but constrained by qualification parameters that had nothing to do with operational capability. Now it's being formally integrated into doctrine development." Morgan nodded thoughtfully. "Systems evolve when operational reality demonstrates artificial limitations. The 800-meter engagement proved capability existed beyond conventional parameters if specialized expertise was properly utilized. The training program represented more than individual recognition. It embodied institutional acknowledgement that some operational requirements transcended traditional structures. Expertise was increasingly being valued for its capability contribution rather than its conformity to certification standards that sometimes excluded unconventional knowledge. On the program's final day, Director Harlow addressed the graduating operators with characteristic directness. "This specialized training represents evolution beyond conventional doctrine. You've been selected to integrate this knowledge into your respective units, expanding operational capabilities beyond traditional limitations." She gestured toward Morgan with professional acknowledgement. "Ms. Shepard's expertise demonstrates that some limitations exist, only because institutional thinking hasn't evolved to overcome them. Your mission is to continue that evolution, ensuring specialized knowledge is properly integrated into operational capability." As the program concluded and operators returned to their respective units, Morgan reflected on the journey that had brought specialized expertise from institutional shadows into doctrinal evolution. The impossible shot at 3,800 meters had been more than an operational achievement. It represented a crack in artificial barriers that had constrained unconventional knowledge within traditional military structures. "What's next?" Peterson asked as they reviewed plans for future training programs. "You've helped establish institutional recognition for capabilities previously constrained by outdated parameters. Where does that evolution lead?" Morgan considered the question thoughtfully. Throughout her career, she'd focused on making impossible shots possible without concern for institutional acknowledgement. Now that specialized expertise was being formally integrated into military capability development, new possibilities emerged for operational evolution beyond conventional limitations. "There are always new barriers to overcome," she replied. "Some physical, some institutional. The key is recognizing which limitations are real constants, and which exist only because we haven't yet developed the expertise to transcend them." The specialized training facility continued operating beyond official acknowledgement, developing capabilities that expanded military doctrine beyond traditional parameters. Morgan Shepard had spent her career making impossible shots possible through expertise that transcended conventional limitations. Now that expertise was helping make impossible institutional evolution equally achievable, creating operational structures that valued specialized knowledge based on capability rather than certification. Because some barriers existed only until someone proved they were illusions rather than absolute limitations. And sometimes the most important shots weren't the ones that reached impossible targets, but the ones that demonstrated institutional evolution beyond artificial constraints, when operational reality demanded capabilities that conventional thinking deemed impossible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. "Some things can't be predicted by algorithms," Olivia replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Human intuition, experience, split-second decision-making, those are still beyond even the most sophisticated AI systems. Which is exactly why Chimera needs human operators," Marco agreed. "The partnership between human judgment and artificial intelligence prediction is more powerful than either alone." It was a perspective Olivia hadn't considered fully until this moment. Not a competition between human capability and artificial intelligence, but a symbiosis, each enhancing the other's strengths and compensating for weaknesses. As they approached the traffic management center, signs of the earlier conflict became visible. Security personnel establishing a perimeter, emergency medical teams treating injured staff, the controlled chaos of a tactical situation still being resolved. "Looks like we missed the main event," Marco observed, spotting a group of detained individuals being processed by local authorities. The attackers who had breached the center, now neutralized and in custody. And standing amidst the controlled chaos, directing the security response with calm authority despite a bloodied bandage on his arm, was Commander Harlow. Olivia parked near the perimeter, and they quickly approached, relief washing through her at the sight of their team leader alive and operational, despite whatever had transpired during the attack. "Nightshade, Diaz," Harlow acknowledged as they reached him. "Good work with the presidential transport. That was the turning point in the operation. Rodriguez and Miller?" Olivia asked immediately, searching for signs of their teammates among the personnel moving around the scene. "Inside, coordinating the system restoration," Harlow replied. "Miller took a round to the shoulder but is stable. Rodriguez is, being Rodriguez, refused medical attention until the systems were secure." It was exactly what Olivia would have expected from the explosive specialist. Mission first, personal needs second, an approach that defined all of Ghost Recon's operations. "The venue attack?" Marco inquired, checking the Chimera device which was still processing incoming data. "Contained," Harlow confirmed. Local security forces responded effectively once the diversion tactics were identified. Multiple hostiles in custody, some casualties among security personnel, but all VIPs secured. "Looks like we disrupted their timeline enough to prevent the worst-case scenario." The Chimera device updated one final time, the prevention probability shifting to 82%. Not perfect, but a significant improvement from the dire predictions earlier in the operation. The coordinated attack had been thwarted, the world leaders protected, and the summit would proceed with enhanced security, but without the catastrophic outcome that had been planned. "So that's it?" Olivia asked, the adrenaline of the operation still coursing through her system. "We stop the attack, capture the perpetrators, and go home?" "Not quite," Harlow replied, his expression turning serious. "We still don't know who was ultimately behind this, which of the 3 threat actors Chimera identified was responsible, or if it was someone else entirely. And there's still the question of what happens next, with you." It was the question Olivia had been avoiding since agreeing to participate in this mission. What came after? Would she return to her life as a delivery driver in the American Southwest, pretending that none of this had happened? Could she go back to that existence, now that she had reconnected with the skills, the purpose, the impact of her former life? "Let's secure the scene and debrief properly," she suggested, postponing the decision for at least a little longer. "I want to check on Rodriguez and Miller. Make sure they're really okay." As they entered the traffic management center, moving past the signs of the battle that had taken place, bullet holes in walls, overturned furniture, bloodstains on the floor, Olivia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From a gas station in Nevada where a Navy SEAL had whispered her ghost Recon name, through the deception in Somalia and the revelation of Chimera's existence, to this moment of partial victory in Singapore, she had been manipulated, lied to, used as a pawn in a game whose full dimensions she still didn't understand. Yet she had also been part of preventing a catastrophic attack that could have destabilized the global order and potentially triggered international conflict. The moral calculus wasn't simple, the ethical boundaries not clearly defined. Inside the center's main control room, they found Rodriguez directing the technical team, restoring the autonomous vehicle systems, her tactical vest stained with what appeared to be someone else's blood, but her movements showing no signs of injury. Miller sat nearby, his shoulder professionally bandaged, but his attention focused on monitoring security camera feeds for any signs of additional threats. "Look what the cat dragged in," Rodriguez commented upon seeing them, a tired smile breaking through her otherwise intense expression. "Heard you pulled off some fancy driving out there, Nightshade." "Just like old times." "Just like old times," Olivia agreed, the phrase carrying more weight than its simple meaning might suggest. It was an acknowledgement of connection, of shared purpose, of the bonds that had once made Ghost Recon Unit 7 legendary within the shadowy world of special operations. As the team regrouped, sharing information and coordinating with local authorities to secure the scene and process intelligence from the captured attackers, Olivia found her thoughts turning to the future, not just the immediate aftermath of this operation, but the longer path ahead. 5 years ago, she had walked away from this life, seeking peace and anonymity after betrayal. Now she had been drawn back in, not entirely by choice, but the experience had awakened something she had tried to suppress. The knowledge that her skills were unique, valuable, and potentially life-saving in ways that driving delivery trucks could never be. "We have a secure channel to headquarters," Harlow announced, interrupting Olivia's thoughts. "Sullivan wants a preliminary report." The mention of Sullivan's name still triggered a flash of anger, but it was tempered now by a more complex understanding of the situation. Whatever his methods, whatever his moral compromises, Sullivan was part of a system attempting to prevent threats before they materialized, a goal Olivia couldn't dismiss, even if she questioned the means. The debriefing was concise and professional, Harlow providing the tactical overview, Ryan detailing the technical aspects of the attack and their countermeasures, Rodriguez summarizing the physical breach and defense of the traffic management center. Olivia contributed her observations about the presidential transport intervention, explaining the tactical decision-making that had led to her successful maneuver. Sullivan listened without interruption, his expression unreadable through the secure video link. When the team had finished their report, he nodded once in acknowledgement. "Excellent work," he said, the words delivered without emotion but carrying the weight of official approval. "The President has been briefed on the operation and extends his personal gratitude for your actions today. The summit will proceed with enhanced security measures, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." It was about as effusive as Sullivan ever got. A simple acknowledgement of mission success without dwelling on the human elements involved, the risks taken, the split-second decisions that had prevented disaster. "And the attackers?" Marco asked, pressing for information that hadn't been included in their briefing. "Have we confirmed which group was responsible?" Sullivan hesitated. then responded with careful precision. Initial interrogation suggests elements from two of the threat actors Chimera identified: technical support from the Russian cyber unit, operational execution by the mercenary group. We're still investigating potential state sponsorship behind the mercenaries. It was more information than Olivia had expected him to share, perhaps an indication that Sullivan was making at least a minimal effort to address the trust issues within the team. "What about Nightshade?" Harlow asked directly, bringing into the open the question that had been hanging over the operation from the beginning. "Her performance today confirms what we already knew. She's still the best tactical driver in the program. We need her back permanently." Sullivan's gaze shifted to Olivia, studying her through the video link with calculating assessment. "That decision is primarily hers to make," he said finally. "Though I would point out that the skills she demonstrated today saved the president's life in a way that few others could have managed. Those skills shouldn't be wasted driving medical supplies across the Southwest." It was manipulative, of course, appealing to Olivia's sense of duty, her awareness of her unique capabilities, her desire to make a meaningful difference. But that didn't make it untrue, which was what made Sullivan so effective at what he did. "I need time," Olivia said, meeting Sullivan's gaze through the screen. "This operation was thrust upon me with deception and manipulation. Any decision about my future needs to be made with full information and on my own terms." Sullivan nodded, seemingly unsurprised by her response. "Fair enough. Take 30 days with full access to program briefings and operational parameters. Make an informed decision. But remember, Chimera identified you as essential to future operations for a reason. Your particular skills will be needed again." The video link terminated, leaving the team to complete their duties in Singapore before extraction. As they worked through the final stages of the operation, securing intelligence from the captured attackers, coordinating with local authorities, preparing for their own departure, Olivia found herself watching her teammates with new awareness. Rodriguez, methodically checking equipment while simultaneously directing the technical team restoring the traffic management systems. Miller, monitoring security feeds despite his injured shoulder, unwilling to stand down until the operation was officially complete. Ryan, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she documented the attack methodology for future analysis. Foster, liaising with local security forces with diplomatic skill that belied his special forces background. Harlow, overseeing it all with the quiet authority that had made him an effective commander in the field. And Marco, who caught her watching and approached as the others continued their tasks. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Many," Olivia admitted. "About Sullivan, about Chimera, about what happens next. But not about today. Today we prevented something terrible from happening. That part is clear." Marco nodded, understanding the complex calculus she was working through. "For what it's worth, I think the program needs people like you. People who question, who maintain their moral compass despite the ambiguities we operate in. It would be easier for Sullivan if everyone just followed orders without consideration of the ethical implications. But it wouldn't be better." It was perhaps the most honest thing Marco had said to her since their reunion, an acknowledgement of both her value to the program and the integrity she brought to her role within it. 30 days, she mused, to decide whether to return to a simple life with clear boundaries or rejoin a world of shadows and moral complexity. "With the added knowledge that your skills can make a difference few others can," Marco reminded her. "That's not manipulation. It's simply truth." 3 weeks later, Olivia stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon, watching the sunset paint the ancient rock formations in shades of gold and crimson. After the operation in Singapore, she had returned to her apartment in the Southwest, ostensibly to consider Sullivan's offer while reconnecting with the life she had built over the past 5 years. But the apartment had felt different, smaller, somehow less substantial, as if her expanded awareness of the world's complexities had changed her perception of the space she occupied within it. The delivery company had welcomed her back, accepting without question the cover story about a government contract, but the routes that had once provided a comforting routine now felt constraining rather than liberating. She had driven to the Grand Canyon on impulse, seeking perspective in the vast geological canvas that had witnessed centuries of human conflict and cooperation, that would remain long after the current geopolitical machinations had been forgotten by all but historians. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a special secure device provided by the program for her consideration period. The screen showed a message from Marco. "Chimera has identified a new pattern, potential maritime threat in the Mediterranean. Your expertise would be valuable. No pressure, no manipulation, just information, an acknowledgement that her skills continued to be needed, that threats continued to emerge, that the work of prevention continued regardless of her personal decision. Olivia slipped the phone back into her pocket without responding, her gaze returning to the spectacular landscape before her. The sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening across the canyon, creating a dramatic interplay of light and darkness that seemed an apt metaphor for the choice she faced. A simple life with clear moral boundaries, or a complex one where those boundaries blurred but where her impact could be measured in lives saved, conflicts prevented, stability maintained in a fragile global order. The secure phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Marco but Rodriguez. "Miller's shoulder is healing well. Team's not the same without you. No pressure, but if you're coming back I've got a bottle of that Scottish whiskey you always liked." Olivia smiled despite herself. Rodriguez had never been one for sentiment, which made the simple message all the more meaningful. It wasn't just about the mission, the skills, the operational necessity. It was about the team, the connection, the shared purpose that gave meaning to the risks they took and the sacrifices they made. As darkness fell over the canyon, stars emerging in the clear desert sky, Olivia made her decision, not based on Sullivan's recruitment pitch or Chimera's predictive models, not even based on the undeniable impact she had made in Singapore, but on a simpler truth. She had been given extraordinary skills, training, and perspective. Those gifts carried responsibility, not obligation, but opportunity. The opportunity to make a difference in ways few others could, to protect those who would never know they had been in danger, to serve a purpose larger than herself. She took out the secure phone and composed a brief message addressed to both Marco and Sullivan. "I'm in, but on my terms. No more deception, full operational transparency, and I want a formal role in ethical oversight of Chimera applications." The response came almost immediately from Sullivan. "Terms accepted. Report to Washington facility in 72 hours for full program integration and Mediterranean briefing." Olivia put the phone away and took one last look at the Grand Canyon, now visible primarily as a vast darkness against the star-filled sky. Tomorrow she would resign from the delivery company, close up her apartment, tie off the loose ends of Olivia Reeves's simple life. Then she would drive east, not as a delivery driver but as Nightshade, the woman who had once been only a driver until a Navy SEAL at a gas station had whispered her ghost Recon name and reminded her of who she truly was, of the difference she could make in a world filled with threats both seen and unseen. It wasn't a perfect solution, and the ethical questions surrounding Chimera's predictive capabilities would require ongoing vigilance. But as she walked back to her Jeep under the desert stars, Olivia felt a clarity of purpose that had been missing for 5 years. She was returning not to the shadows she had fled after Somalia, but to a new role, where her unique skills, her questioning nature, and her moral compass would all be valuable in navigating the complex landscape of modern security challenges. The Jeep started with a familiar rumble, and Olivia pulled away from the canyon viewpoint, heading back toward the highway that would eventually take her to Washington. The road ahead was long, the challenges uncertain, but one thing was clear. She was no longer running from her past or hiding from her capabilities. She was driving forward, eyes open, fully aware of both the responsibilities and the possibilities that awaited. Somewhere between the delivery driver she had been and the special operator she had once been, Nightshade had found a new identity, one defined not by what she was running from, but by what she was moving toward. A future where her extraordinary skills behind the wheel would continue to make an extraordinary difference in a world that needed people willing to take the wheel when the road ahead turned dangerous. The highway stretched before her like a promise, and Olivia Monroe, delivery driver, special operator, Nightshade, accelerated into her future with the same precision, control, and purpose that had once made her the best tactical driver in the program, and would again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.